The tray was steady in my hands, deviled eggs, 12 of them, lined just right on my best porcelain dish. I had chilled them that morning and piped the yolk filling with care. But standing there, framed in the back doorway, it wasn't my grip that wavered. It was something deeper. Something behind my ribs, a kind of heat, like a flare of embarrassment that hadn't been invited. I heard laughter. At first, just the usual kind that floats over barbecue smoke, unfocused, warm, harmless. But then I heard him, my grandson. His laugh rose above the rest, louder, sharper, unmistakably proud of itself. I didn't know what had happened yet, but I felt it anyway. In my knees, in my chest, in the stillness of my breath. I didn't move. I just stood there, the summer breeze brushing the edge of my blouse, the scent of grilled onions thick in the air. The tray cooled against my palms, but I was burning from the inside out. And before I saw him, I already knew. He was bent at the waist, knees wobbling like springs, arms flailing out as he took exaggerated dragging steps. People were laughing, real belly laughter. One of the cousins pointed. Someone clapped. I heard someone say, "He's got it down perfectly." And I watched him, my grandson, my baby, mocking my walk, my limp. The way my left side sags just a bit since the surgery. He was putting on a show, making my pain look ridiculous. I noticed everything at that moment. The ketchup smeared on his cheek, the untied lace of his sneaker, the way his shoe scuffed the edge of the grass as he twisted, and all I could think was, I taught you how to stand. I was the one who held your hands when your legs were too weak. I was the one who cheered your every shaky step. Now you mock mine. Not because you're cruel, but because you've forgotten what it took for me to walk. The laughter didn't fade, but I wasn't in on the joke. I think someone noticed me standing there, but they didn't say anything. A neighbor chuckled politely and looked away. My daughter, she reached for a napkin to wipe something off the table, eyes sliding right past me. No one called my name. No one said, "Mom, are you okay?" I smiled. At least I think I did. The corners of my mouth pulled, but it wasn't. Joy I tasted. It was burnt sugar, forced, bitter. I didn't say a word, just stood there with that smile stuck to my face like it had been stitched in, and I remember thinking, this is how invisibility begins. Not with shouting, not with silence, but with small humiliations no one notices except you. The tray was still in my hands, but it felt heavier now. My arms started to ache, not from the weight, but from holding something so carefully in a place where care didn't seem to exist anymore. I blinked hard. The air wasn't smoky, but my eyes burned like it was. I tried to clear the blur. Maybe I just didn't want to see it all so clearly. I adjusted the tray in my hands, like that little movement could fix the way I suddenly didn't fit in that space anymore. Like maybe, if I just held it tighter, I'd still belong. The breeze cooled just a bit. I could smell pine sap and the sharp tang of citronella candles trying to fight off the bugs. But all I could feel was how much I wanted to set the tray down and leave without making a sound. No one followed when I turned. I walked through the back door, letting the screen fall gently behind me. My sandals tapped softly against the tile, but in my ears it sounded like thunder, every step echoing the truth that no one noticed I was leaving. I passed the hallway where our old family photos hang, baby cheeks and graduation gowns, Christmas, mornings and beach trips. Every one of them smiled, every one of them frozen in time. And I thought, how long have I been fading from these frames? The house smelled like potato salad and lemon-scented bleach, familiar, clean, but today it felt distant. I made it to the kitchen, where the fridge hummed and the counter waited, still not a sound behind me. I set the tray down gently, carefully, as if loudness might shatter something already cracking inside. The eggs were still perfect. yellow centers holding their shape, garnished just right. I'd made them to be shared, but now they looked like offerings to a party I didn't belong to. My hands were steady, not a single tremble, but my chest was soft and hollow. Stared at the eggs, 12 of them, lined like little soldiers trying to keep the peace, just like I'd been doing for years. Smile, nod, say thank you, be easy to love. But somehow, I'd still become a joke. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. But something inside me, something I'd been holding tight, softened, and then it slid apart, quietly, almost politely. Like even my breaking had good manners. He would sit in the center of that old quilt, blue flannel with ducks on the corners, and the second I moved 2 feet away, he'd let out that cry. It wasn't loud or angry. It was softer, like he was asking a question he didn't know how to form yet. A question that sounded like, "Come back, I'm not ready without you." I remember the first time it happened. I had just turned toward the sink, reaching for his bottle. And then it came, his voice, that gentle plea. Not desperate, but full of need. Like I was the ground itself, and without me, he couldn't tell up from down. I didn't hesitate. I turned right back around, knelt, and opened my hands. "Come on, baby," I whispered. He reached for me, tears forgotten the second our eyes met. That kind of cry. It goes somewhere deep in you. A place that doesn't have a name, only a reflex. And mine was always the same. Go to him. Be there. Every single time. The living room. Carpet had foam blocks underneath it, just in case. We'd padded everything back then, corners, shelves, even the edges of the toy chest. But no padding could prepare your heart for those first steps. He stood, arms out, face lit with a kind of fearless joy. His knees shook like saplings in the wind. I held my breath. "One step," I said gently, hands wide open. "You can do it." He stumbled forward, swayed to the side, and lunged, not for the floor, but for me. I caught him mid-giggle, and we both laughed like it was the grandest moment on earth. "Again?" I asked. His head bobbed like a bauble toy, cheeks flushed. I did it 10 more times, maybe more. I stopped counting after a while, but every step felt like a small miracle. His sticky fingers gripped my thumbs with such certainty, as if they were the only things keeping him from falling through the world. And I remember thinking, he'll always run to me. That day he did, again and again. And I let myself believe, maybe he always would. It happened fast, quicker than I could move, quicker than even he knew what was happening. His socks, too smooth on the wooden floor, slid out from under him. His little legs gave way, and he landed, with a soft thud that sounded louder in my chest than it did in the room. His mouth opened wide, a full-body betrayal in his face. I didn't wait for the cry. I was already on the floor beside him. "It's okay, baby. I got you," I whispered, scooping him into my lap before the first sob made it out. He wailed. His hands clutched my shirt. I kissed his knee without thinking. Again. And again, like that kiss could undo gravity. There, I'm right here. You're safe." Slowly the cries melted into hiccups. His breath steadied. He looked up at me, eyes still watery, but calm now. He didn't trust the floor yet. But he trusted me, and that's all that mattered. I'd clap my hands once, and he'd come wobbling toward me like a little wind-up toy, knees wide, arms flapping for balance. It became our rhythm, our dance. I'd say, "Come on, baby," and back up just a few. Inches more each time, and he'd follow, laughing, squealing, sometimes falling, but always getting back up. We made a game of it. I'd spin a little. He'd try to copy me. Once he twirled so hard he ended up on his bottom, eyes wide with surprise. Then laughter poured out of him, bright and bubbling like bathwater play. "Again!" he'd shout, reaching up, already forgetting the fall. I didn't care how many times he toppled. It wasn't about staying up. It was about wanting to. We built something in those afternoons, something wordless and strong. A kind of language just between us, made from claps, stumbles, and little triumphs. And when I close my eyes, I can still hear that giggle, wet and wild and free. That was our song. The house had finally gone quiet. Toys tucked away, pajamas folded. He had fallen asleep mid-story, curled on his side, tiny feet still twitching now and then, like he was walking through dreams. I sat in the rocker, near the window. The rain had started again, soft, steady, rhythmic. The window pane blurred gently, drops sliding down like lazy runners in a race. I watched them for a long time. Each step he'd taken that day felt like the first page of a long story I wouldn't always be around to read. One day, he'd walk without, looking back, down a driveway, across a stage, maybe through heartbreak, maybe toward love. I couldn't pad the world like I'd padded the carpet, couldn't stop the falls that would come, but I had shown him how to start. And somehow, sitting there, listening to the rain and his even breathing, that felt like enough. It was a few years later, maybe more. We were sitting in his room, nightlight casting soft shapes on the walls. I was tucking the sheet just under his chin when he said it. "Grandma, you were my steady bridge." I paused, brushing his hair back gently. "Your what?" "You helped me get brave on my feet." He said it so simply, like it was just a passing thought, not something that would echo in my heart for the rest of my life. I smiled, leaned down, and kissed his forehead. "You're walking strong now." He didn't say anything in return, but his hand reached for mine under the blanket, and he gave it a squeeze. Just once. He didn't know what those words meant to me. Didn't know they were a kind of medal I'd never wear, but always hold close. I whispered, "Good night, baby," and sat there for a while longer, just holding on. The hallway was quiet that morning. Sunlight came in slow and golden, brushing the top of the dresser where I kept all the cards. The ones they gave me year after year, some still glittery, some with corners curled. I opened the drawer with my good hand and slipped the envelope in behind them. It was thick, not with celebration, but with X-rays. A clean white folder, hiding. A crack I didn't want to explain. I tucked it behind a birthday card shaped like a cake, one Matt had made years ago with purple marker and a glued-on bow that still smelled faintly of school crayons. I didn't cry. I just stood there, holding the drawer half open like maybe it would ask me to think again. But it didn't. It wasn't shameful exactly. It was more like armor. I didn't want them looking at me like I might tip over, like they'd have to. Start hovering or speaking slower. I just wanted peace. So I closed the drawer, quietly, just enough to hide what hurt, but not enough to feel dishonest. And that was that. The floor was cold under my feet, but I moved anyway, slow and steady. I had a hand on the counter, the other on the spoon, stirring soup like nothing ached. Every step felt like stepping on glass. Not sharp enough to scream, just enough to remind you something under the surface wasn't right. But when the doorbell rang, I smiled. I adjusted my sweater and walked a little straighter. "Coming," I called, voice bright. The kind of bright you use when you're trying to protect people from the dim. I opened the door to my neighbor and her little girl holding flowers. I smiled wider. "Aren't you sweet?" I said, reaching for the vase I had ready just in case someone remembered me. They didn't notice the way I leaned hard on the frame. That was the goal. After they left, I went back to the kitchen, pressed my hand flat on the countertop to catch my breath. The clock ticked above the sink. The broth bubbled gently, and I remember thinking, let them see strength, not struggle. Even if I had to fake it, spoon by spoon. After the surgery, the walker made too much noise. It clattered like a warning bell. I didn't like that sound, so I started sitting more, by the window, at the table, Anywhere I could blend in quietly. I'd fold a towel slowly just to keep my hands moving. I'd sip tea long past warm, letting the steam kiss my lip even when the flavor was gone. Outside, a lawnmower buzzed somewhere down the block. Not too loud, just enough to make the silence less lonely. I remember sitting in the corner chair, my favorite, the one with the blue cushion that sagged in the middle. My fingers traced the line of stitches on my side, right through the cotton of my dress. "You'll heal quietly," I whispered. "They don't need to know everything." The curtain shifted gently with the breeze. I leaned into it, letting the sunlight warm one shoulder. It didn't feel like hiding. It felt like protecting them, from worry, from change, from the way pain softens people into strangers. It started small. I'd miss a punchline, or I'd fumble the cup just a little too fast and the tea would spill over the saucer. They laughed gently. Not cruel, not mean, just lightly, like brushing lint from a coat. "Grandma," someone would chuckle. "You okay over there?" I'd smile. "Just clumsy today," I'd say, wiping the spill quickly. But inside, I wasn't laughing. I wasn't angry either, just floating, watching it all happen without a hand reaching back. No one really asked if I was hurting. They assumed, I think, that if it were serious, I'd say something. But I didn't. I let the laughter fill the space where concern might have gone. Because admitting the truth meant inviting help. And help meant being seen as breakable. So, I just let them chuckle, and I folded my hands in my lap and smiled along. Because pretending was easier than the look I knew I'd get if I didn't. There's a look people give when they think they're helping. A tilt of the head, a softening of the voice. "Do you need to sit, Mom?" Let me carry that for you. I've seen it 1,000 times. Good intentions wrapped in pity, like I was porcelain, like I'd gone from matriarch to caution sign, overnight. I didn't want that. I didn't want to be precious. I wanted to be seen, not managed. So I practiced walking slower but steady. I kept the cane close, but not obviously. I smiled when I limped, just enough to make it look like part of my rhythm, not a stumble. If I limp quietly enough, I told myself, maybe I can keep the last piece of my dignity intact. I wasn't being stubborn. I was trying to hold on to the version of me that made people feel safe, not sorry, and I'd rather ache in silence than be bubble-wrapped in concern. They never asked, and I never said. That's the part I can't shake. Now, I thought silence would protect us. Though it would keep the mood light, the holidays were simple. But it didn't. It just made space for distance. I used to think I was being strong. Now I wonder if I was just afraid. The truth is, I didn't give them a chance to show up for me. I sat by the window tonight with a cup of tea, watching the last bit of light stretch across the floor. The neighbor's mower had finally gone quiet. All I could hear was the sound of my own thoughts and the creak of the house settling. I looked at the bookshelf, at the photos, at the shadows in the corners, and I remember thinking, you can't blame them for not seeing through closed doors. Maybe next time, I'll leave one just a little open, just wide enough to be seen. Her hand went to the wine glass, not to me. She swirled it slowly, eyes fixed on the burgundy liquid like it had answers. I sat still at the other end of the table, my hands folded in my lap, waiting, hoping, maybe, for her to say something that reached the middle of me. "I'm sure he didn't mean it that way," she said finally, voice soft, too soft. She didn't look up, and just like that, it slipped. The invisible rug I'd been standing on tugged from under my dignity. I nodded. Not because I agreed, not because it didn't hurt, but because arguing would have made me look dramatic. Or, worse, old. The candle on the table flickered, low and tired, just like I felt. The smell of roasted vegetables still lingered in the air, though no one was eating anymore. I stared at the rim of my empty glass, and for the first time in a long while I felt completely outside. There was a red wine stain spreading on the white tablecloth, right near the salt shaker. I don't know when it happened, maybe when she poured that second glass, maybe before. No one moved to wipe it. They just talked around it like it wasn't there, just like no one tried to mend what had been said earlier. I reached out and traced the edge of the fabric with one finger. The cloth was thick, but the wine was stubborn. It spread slowly, like a bruise under the skin. Some messes, I thought, don't get cleaned. They just get lived with. From the kitchen, I could hear someone laughing. A cousin, maybe. A clink of dishes. The sounds of normalcy returning. But here, at this table, everything felt still. Like we had all silently agreed that what happened hadn't. She knows how I take my tea. 2 sugars, no lemon. She knows where I keep the scissors in the garden shed, the way I hum when I fold towels. But sitting there, across from me, she didn't know me at all, or maybe she didn't want to. Her fingers toyed with the edge of her napkin, but her eyes didn't meet mine, not fully, and I sat there, next to an untouched slice of pie, wondering, can someone love you deeply, yet only on the surface? The question didn't come with heat or blame. Just weight, the kind of weight that settles next to your dinner plate, between you and the person who should know better. The candle had gone out, just smoke curling up into nothing. She smiled then, quick and clean, the kind of smile you use to close the conversation you don't want to finish. Everything okay now? She said lightly, lifting her glass again. Something inside me coiled, not in anger, but in that quiet, slow way that grief sometimes does. I smiled back. It wasn't real. It was stitched together from muscle memory and resignation. Not for what was said, but for what never would be. The air in the room had cooled. I could feel it under the table, brushing against my ankles. In the kitchen, plates clinked. Someone was already moving on, but I stayed in my chair, holding that fake smile in place like a bandage I didn't ask for. I lifted my fork and speared a piece of green bean. Lukewarm, maybe cooler. I chewed, not because I was hungry, but because it gave my mouth something to do besides speak. The food didn't taste like anything, just texture. Behind my teeth, I held the words I wanted to say. It hurt. Your son hurt me, but I didn't tell them. I swallowed more than the bite. The ache that followed wasn't in my hip this time. It was in my throat. That soft, heavy kind of ache you get when you've held your truth too long. Love, I've learned, sometimes asks us to be silent, but silence has a way of souring. She looked so much like herself in that moment, shoulders pulled back, the same tilt of her head I remembered when she was 5. And yet, she felt like someone I'd just met. I sat across from her and realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. I've spent a lifetime explaining away the people I love. It's just the way he is. She's tired. He didn't mean it. I told myself it was grace. But sitting there as the candle burned itself into a little curl of smoke, Grace felt tired. I looked at her and thought, maybe next time I won't nod. Maybe I'll say it hurts. Maybe the next time someone bruises me with laughter, I'll stop pretending it's a joke. Maybe I didn't need the sugar. I needed something warm in my hands, something soft, something that didn't ask questions or require explanations. The cinnamon roll was just an excuse. A way to leave the house without telling anyone. My heart felt a little bruised. The bakery smelled like comfort, yeast and butter and something sweet on the edge of burning. I stood near the counter, looking at things I didn't plan to buy, just letting the warm air and quiet chatter wash over me. I told myself it was just a treat, a small one. But really, it was about choosing myself in a way no one would notice. No big declaration, just a quiet act of kindness, directed inward, for once. I didn't have to smile here. I didn't have to explain anything. I could just be a woman buying a roll on a cool morning, and for a few minutes, that felt like enough. Was deciding between the cinnamon braid and the sticky bun when I heard it. Marilyn? Not sharp, not surprised, just soft, like the way a screen door opens when someone still knows how to come home gently. I turned, and there she was, June. Scarf slightly off-center, cheeks pink from the breeze. Her eyes were already reading me, before I even said a word. "June," I said, more breath than voice. She stepped forward, smiling full of something both familiar and concerned. "You still come here for the cinnamon rolls?" I nodded, suddenly shy. "Some habits don't quit easily," she chuckled. "That's the good kind." Something in me loosened, like I'd been holding my breath for weeks and didn't notice. Until that moment. She didn't ask why I looked tired. She didn't need to. She saw it. The way some people do when they've been through enough of their own, and somehow, in all the smells and warmth of that bakery, I felt seen. We sat by the window, small wooden table, warm patch of sun stretching across the bricks. She looked at me like she had all the time in the world. "You okay?" I nodded too fast, too practiced. "I'm fine," I said, then paused. "Actually, I'm not." I told her about the barbecue, about my grandson, about how he mocked my limp and the way they all laughed like it didn't matter, like I didn't matter. Her brow furrowed, but she didn't interrupt. She just listened. "It wasn't a joke," I said softly. "It was how easy it was to laugh, and how nobody noticed me leave." The cinnamon roll sat between us, untouched, but my throat ached like I'd swallowed something hard. "I didn't think it would sting that much," I said. June nodded once, eyes warm. It always stings more when it comes from the ones who should know better. She didn't rush in with comfort. She didn't talk quietly. She just looked at me. Really. Looked, like she was remembering something old in herself. "Sounds like," she said, "it's time you started walking toward yourself again." Her voice wasn't stern. It wasn't soft either. It was steady. I blinked at her, not because I didn't understand, but because I did. It wasn't advice, not the kind you jot down or argue with. It was a reminder. One I'd tucked away like an old scarf in a drawer, faded but still warm. The coffee grinder buzzed behind us. A bell chimed as someone walked in. Life kept moving. But in that little pocket of time, something inside me realigned, not in a big way, just enough to sit up straighter, just enough to hear myself again. I didn't argue. I didn't offer some clever comeback. I just nodded, and I felt it, the way her words wrapped around me. Not tight, but gently, like someone laying a warm napkin in your lap before a meal. Thoughtful, quiet, kind. She didn't push. She didn't ask me to fix anything. Just left the words there for me to carry. I glanced down at the cinnamon roll. I'd only taken one bite, but somehow I already felt full. I remember thinking, maybe it's time I stop showing up for everyone but myself. Maybe it's okay to choose me, to walk at my own pace. Maybe, just maybe, that's what healing looks like. When we hugged goodbye, it wasn't dramatic. No heavy tears or long speeches. We just held each other a little longer than usual, a beat longer than politeness required. The kind of hug that says, "I see you," without needing to say it at all. Her coat smelled like lavender and old books. It took me back to when we were younger, when we'd share scarves and secrets in the same breath. I pulled back, my hands still resting lightly on her arms. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too," I replied, voice softer now. As I stepped out, the cold air brushed against my cheek. But my chest felt warmer. Sometimes the smallest voices, the ones spoken over coffee and sugar, remind you who you are before the world told you otherwise. The red blouse still had the tag on it. It had hung in the back of my closet for years, buried, between grays and soft blues. I'd bought it once on a whim when the saleswoman said, "You light up in this," but I'd never worn it. It always felt too loud for someone like me. That morning, though, I reached past the old cardigans, past the safe beige. My hand paused, then curled around the sleeve. It felt smooth, bold, like fabric made out of a decision. I held it up to the window light, letting the morning sun fill it from behind. It glowed, almost dared me. I smiled to myself. "Let them blink," I whispered. The scent of lavender sachet drifted from the drawer below, blending with clean linen and a soft memory of who I used to be. I slipped it on slowly, as if it were armor stitched with softness, and for the first time in a long while, I chose something just for me. The pew creaked a little when I sat, but it didn't seem to mind me. I usually chose the side rows. Easier, exits, less seen. But that morning, I walked straight to the front. First row, far left. The cushion beneath me felt firmer than I remembered, like it was holding me up differently. The sanctuary was bathed in soft light. Red and gold spilled across the stone floor from the stained glass above, pooling near my feet like warm water. I didn't glance around to see who saw me. I didn't need to. I folded my hands in my lap and listened to the organ hum its opening note. It filled the space slowly, like breath after too long holding still. I sat taller. I wasn't performing. I wasn't proving anything. I was present, and I felt it. Not pride. Presence. The kind that roots you to your own name, your own body, your own seat in the world. The cane stayed by the dresser that morning, propped up gently against the corner. I ran my hand over its curve before I left, not to grab it, just to acknowledge it. Thank you, maybe. But I didn't take it. My legs still shook a little. That hadn't changed. But I wanted to feel the ground today. All of it. Through my own soles. Through memory and muscle. The stone walkway into the church was familiar. Each crack, each step. The spring breeze tugged at the hem of my red blouse, lifting it just slightly like a flag in motion. I walked slowly. Deliberately, not for them. Not to earn a seat or a glance or grace. I walked for myself. Each footstep whispered, "You're still here. You're still yours." Birds sang above the eaves, light and clear, and I realized I wasn't avoiding being seen anymore. I was letting myself be witnessed. I felt the glances the way one feels a sudden breeze. Women I'd sat beside before, their hands folded just like mine. One smiled, gentle, unsure. Another looked quickly away. The grandchildren, back 2 rows, whispered behind hymn books. Teenagers, probably not even aware of how sharp their noticing could feel. But I didn't shrink. I didn't smooth my blouse or lower my head. I let the red stay bright. I let my shoulders stay square. Let them wonder. Let them not understand. If they were surprised, that was theirs to carry. I wasn't trying to be provocative. I was trying to be real. And real sometimes looks like returning in color when they thought you'd faded for good. I breathed in the soft scent of wood polish and old pages, the pewbacks catching light as the sun shifted inch by inch. Let them look. I wasn't looking back for approval. The hymn rose like it always did, soft at first, then blooming across the room. I opened my mouth and joined in, but something in me had changed. There was no tremble in my voice this time, no second guessing. My pitch wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I didn't hide inside the crowd. I didn't let the melody cover me. I let it carry me. I sang like I belonged there, not because they allowed it, but because I had allowed myself. The sunbeam hit my hymn page, lighting up the words I knew by heart. My fingers didn't fumble the lines. I stood straighter as we reached the final verse, feeling the breath in my chest steady and sure. And in that moment I knew. This wasn't just about a song. It was about claiming space. Even if no one noticed, I had returned. Fully. When the last note faded into silence, I stood first. I didn't wait for greetings or for someone to ask how I'd been. I didn't linger for forced kindness or shallow words. I walked straight down the aisle. The red blouse swayed with each step, bold as a banner. My feet moved on gravel now, the small stones crunching under each heel like applause I didn't need. The air outside was cool and crisp. The scent of daffodils wrapped around me like a gentle crown. I didn't look back. Not at the doors. Not at the people. Not who I had to be to sit quietly all those Sundays. I walked forward because I didn't need to limp into anyone's grace anymore. I had stitched my own, and the breeze felt like it agreed. The canvas tote slipped. Before I realized how loosely I'd slung it over my shoulder, books tumbled out, spilling across the warm sidewalk like scattered petals. A paperback slid into the shade, another bounced once and flipped open to the middle like it had something urgent to say. I sighed, bent slowly to gather them, careful not to twist my hip too far. My cheeks flushed, not from shame, just the fluster of being watched, even if no one was. The sun was soft but steady, warming the concrete. I could smell paper and dust and a faint sweetness from the cherry trees nearby. The passing cars hummed behind me, not bothering to slow down. As I scooped up Willa Cather and Shirley Jackson, I thought to myself, at least it's the stories I'm dropping, not dignity this time. And oddly, that gave me a little smile. Because these stories, these old friends of mine, they always had a way of catching me before I fell too far. I hadn't even reached for the last book when I heard footsteps. Calm ones. Not hurried, not intrusive, just present. He knelt beside me, his hands moving with gentle intention. "Let me help," he said, not loudly, not with pity, just matter of fact. His voice was kind, the way someone sounds when they don't want anything in return. He picked up my Antonia and smiled faintly. "My grandma used to read these," he said, and something inside me folded, not in pain, but in softness. A quiet crease across my heart. I glanced at him, tall, clean-shaven, maybe in his 20s. His shirt was wrinkled, his shoes scuffed, but his eyes held something steady, the kind of kindness that isn't performative, the kind that's been raised into a person, not taught in a workshop. The breeze teased the hem of my skirt as I thanked him. He just nodded, like helping was as natural as breathing. And for a moment, I didn't feel old. I just felt human. He didn't ask why I had so many books, didn't offer to carry them to my car, didn't linger with concern or make small talk to fill the air. He just handed the last one over, offered a quiet smile, and gave a small, respectful nod. And then he walked away, just like that. No big moments, no dramatic parting. I stood there longer than I needed to, holding my bag and my breath like I'd just been handed something invisible but valuable. There was laughter in the distance, children chasing each other down the side of the library lawn. The stone steps beneath me were warm. Shadows from the railing cut across them like gentle stripes. For all the noise the world usually makes, this moment felt hushed, and in that stillness, I felt surprised. Not by him, but by how moved I was. To be treated with such quiet dignity. Kindness, it turns out, can still take me by surprise. Back home, I laid the books gently on the kitchen table, one by one, like setting down memories. I should have made lunch, should have changed into house shoes. But I didn't. I stood there, letting the quiet fill in around me. There was one book I didn't put down. My Antonia. His fingers had touched its spine, and it lingered with me, not in a romantic way, but in the kind of human way that says, I saw you. I helped. No fanfare. The kitchen window was open. A soft breeze rustled the lace curtain. The tea on the stove had gone cold, but I didn't mind. I held the book against my chest for a moment. Closed my eyes. This was the kind of goodness that doesn't ask for thanks, the kind that reminds you you're still a person worth offering help to, even if the world sometimes forgets. Later that night, I opened my journal. Not the one I leave out for anyone to see, but the one I keep in the drawer under the quilted napkins. The one for moments that touch the part of me I don't always know how to share. I didn't know his name. Didn't need to. I wrote about the way he moved, the way his presence felt more like a pause than a statement. Gentle. Steady. Then I wrote, kindness finds you in places mockery never will. I sat back, read it aloud. The words filled the room with something I hadn't felt in a while. Peace, maybe. Or clarity, or just the sound of my own truth. The bedroom lamp glowed golden across the desk. Outside, the night air carried a scent of lilacs. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called out once. I closed the journal, set down my pen, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel forgotten. He didn't know anything about me. Not the limp, not the barbecue, not the ache of being laughed at by people I love. And still, he saw someone worth helping, worth kneeling beside, worth handing a book to with care. I think sometimes the people closest to you, they forget how to really see. They start looking through memory instead of at the moment. They stop noticing when you soften, when you're hurting, when you just need someone to treat you like you matter. But sometimes, every so often, it's a stranger, a passing kindness, a quiet connection that reminds you you're not as invisible as you feel. I sat in my chair that night, the house silent around me. The cherry blossom petals on the window screen caught the light from the street lamp like pale stamps pressed to glass, and I remember thinking, maybe we don't need to be known to be seen. Sometimes we just need to be noticed by someone who has nothing to gain, and that, somehow, is enough. I was folding laundry when the phone buzzed, slow, low against the dresser wood. I wiped my hands on the towel, not rushing, just moving like I always did. When I saw his name flash on the screen, I froze. His name blinked there like a soft apology, not bold, not loud, just blinking, quietly asking for space. My thumb hovered. My heart didn't race, not exactly. It thudded softer than usual, but deeper. Like it understood this was going to be a moment, one that needed me to listen with more than just ears. I pressed answer and raised it to my cheek. "Hey, Grandma," he said. I waited. So did he. Then, almost like he had to pull the words up, from someplace deep. "Were you upset that day?" And that silence after. It wasn't empty. It was him handing me a key and waiting to see if I'd unlock the truth with it. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still holding a towel. "Yes," I said softly. I was. The words didn't shake. They didn't sting. They just settled into the air, simple and long overdue. And then I told him why. I talked about the surgery he didn't know I'd had, about the cane I tried to hide, about the mornings I winced through just to still be welcome at the table. I told him how I folded pain into smiles like napkins into laps, neatly, tightly, without wrinkles. I didn't say anything, I told him, because I didn't want to change how you saw me. The room was still, only the wall clock ticking, curtains lifting softly with the breeze. I wasn't angry. I was just tired of pretending it hadn't hurt. And as I spoke, I realized I wasn't blaming him. I was stitching something back together. A tear, invisible but real. And I was finally letting it show. I told him what it felt like to smile through a body that betrayed me. How I had learned to laugh before the pain could register on someone else's face. That joke, I said. Hurt. Not because it was cruel, but because it was easy. Too easy. I paused, not for drama, just to breathe. I've spent my life, I told him, making my pain look polite. I thought that was love. I thought that was strength. But maybe I was just trying not to scare you. I looked out the window. The sky was that heavy shade of blue it only gets right before night fully falls. You didn't mean to hurt me, I said, voice steady now. But you did. The air was warm, thick with summer. But inside, I felt clearer than I had. In months. Because sometimes the deepest pain isn't what's done. It's how easily it was done without anyone noticing you were even there. He didn't rush to speak. Didn't say, I didn't mean it, or you're being sensitive. He just breathed. Slow, quiet, different. And in that space between his inhale and his reply, I heard something better than an apology. I heard him listening, not just to my words, but to the parts I hadn't said. For years I'd carried things alone, to the small cracks in my voice that even I hadn't noticed until now. I closed my eyes and leaned back slightly on the pillows. The phone speaker crackles gently. A dog barked in the distance, but even that felt hushed, like the world knew. It needed to give us room, and I thought, this is what it sounds like when someone finally hears you. Not with arguments, not with answers, just stillness and care. I'm sorry, he said. Not loud, not polished, just real. It didn't sound like a performance. It sounded like a boy who just remembered how much I mattered. His voice dropped, not in pitch, but in posture. It bent toward me. He was quiet after that, waiting, I suppose. I didn't say, it's okay, because it wasn't, and we both knew that. But I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. My hand went to my chest, just lightly, like I was pressing down something sacred, something small and alive that had finally been seen. The lamp still glowed beside me. The phone was warm in my palm. Outside, the cicadas had grown louder. A soft, constant hum. I whispered, thank you. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. Sometimes one true sorry can mend more than 100 empty I love yous. The line went quiet, eventually. No click, no goodbye. Just a soft fade. I stayed on the edge of the bed, not ready to stand, not ready to move. Love, I've learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a question asked gently, a pause held long. Enough for truth to rise up. I sat there and thought about all the times I had made things easy. All the times I had said, it's fine, instead of, it hurt. And then I thought of him, my grandson, on the other end of that line, choosing to ask, even late, even clumsy. That meant something. It's not too late, I thought. Not too late to teach him how to see me. Not too late to show that love can bend and grow, even after it forgets. I leaned back, turned off the lamp. The air was heavy with heat. But inside me, something had lifted, and I slept that night with a heart a little fuller, and a silence that finally felt safe. I didn't wear black. That morning wasn't a funeral. I wore slate blue, a color that knows how to speak without shouting. It made me feel calm, clear, like I knew what I was doing and why. My shoes were soft-soled, easy on my knees. My purse held only what I needed, my ID, a single peppermint, and the documents I'd revised in my head a dozen times before they ever hit paper. I drove myself. The sun was steady through the windshield, not too bright. I remember stopping at a red light and glancing at the folder on the passenger seat. My fingers tapped it once, like you might tap a doorknob before walking through. It wasn't about anger, it wasn't about punishment, it was about recognition, about boundaries, about putting things where they belonged, not to erase anyone, just to stop erasing myself, and in that quiet, steady blue, I felt ready. His name stayed on the page. I didn't scratch it out, didn't blot it, just moved it. It used to be at the top, first, automatic, unquestioned. But love, I've come to realize, shouldn't be placed by default. It should be earned with presence, with kindness, with listening. So I shifted him down the page, below the ones who came when I needed company without conversation, below the ones who sat beside me at church when walking took effort, below the friend who remembered my birthday after everyone else forgot, not out of bitterness, out of balance. The office smelled like wood polish and something faintly citrus, his cologne maybe. My pen moved slowly but steady. The ink curved through my signature like a breath. I remember pausing just before the adjustment, looking at the name, thinking, you still matter. But not more than the people who show me I do. Love should reflect, not just assume. I smiled when I reached the part about the quilt drawer. That drawer held pieces of my life. Baby blankets stitched during quiet winters, flannel squares from shirts long gone. One patch was made from my old apron, another from a skirt that didn't fit, but I loved too much to throw away. I left them to my goddaughter. Not because she asked. She never asked for anything, but when things were hard, she sat next to me without trying to fix them. She brought tea, she folded laundry. She told me I didn't have to explain myself. She just stayed. So I wrote her name with care. And when I did, I felt something unclench. There was no tension, no second guessing, just warmth, just a full heart and a choice that made itself. She gets the quilts. She gets that part of me, because some people earn inheritance not with obligation, but with quiet loyalty. I included a note. Not long, just a few lines. It's not about what you said. It's about what you didn't see. That was all. I didn't write it out of anger. I didn't underline anything or use big words. Just plain handwriting. Truth, folded into sentences that had waited too long to be written. I signed my name in full. Not just grandma, not just a first initial, my whole name. Because this truth belonged to all of me. Not just the version they liked at holidays. I folded the note, placed it into the envelope, sealed it gently, the way you might close a box of memories. It wasn't dramatic, it was final, clear, and it didn't feel like I was starting a fight. It felt like I was setting something down so I didn't have to carry it anymore. He didn't ask me why. And I liked that about him. The lawyer, I mean. He glanced at the paper, nodded, adjusted his glasses, clicked his pen and placed the folder neatly in front of me. No judgment. No curiosity, just respect. Some truths don't need to be retold. They just need to be reordered. He understood that. His office was quiet, except for the soft ticking of a wall clock. My chair squeaked a little when I shifted. I pressed my hand flat over the final draft. Fingers splayed. The paper felt warm from the sun coming through the window, and I thought, this is how you rewrite the ending, without tearing up the beginning, not erasing history, just reorganizing it to finally include the parts I used to leave out. Myself. He stepped out to make copies, said he'd be back in 5, and in those 5 minutes, the wind from the open window picked up, just enough to lift the top page of the will. It fluttered once, twice, then settled gently back down. I smiled, not because it was poetic, because it felt like a soft nod from something bigger than me. I leaned back, closed my eyes for a second, and let the quiet hold me. The sounds outside were distant, traffic moving slow, a bird chirping once, then quiet. A breeze carried in the scent of new leaves, and maybe a hint of exhaust, but it all blended into stillness. I whispered, "So be it." Not like a prayer, more like a release. And in that moment, I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done, clean, and ready for whatever came next, with nothing left to prove. I take the same route I always have. The sidewalk curves past the same houses, under the same canopy of maple trees. I walked it once with a stroller, Matt tucked in tight, his little fists waving at the morning air. Then again, years later, with a cane, steadying each step. Now I walk with both, muscle and memory working together. My feet know this road better than I know some of my relatives, where the pavement dips slightly by the storm drain, where the rose bush leans a little too far out from Mrs. Klein's yard. It's not a grand path. It's not long or winding, but it's mine. There's dew still clinging to the grass. The air smells like damp concrete and the clean bite of a freshly mowed lawn. I don't walk it for exercise anymore. Not for company, not for anyone watching from their porch. They don't have to wave, because I'm not walking for them anymore, and I'm not walking away. I'm walking back to myself. The cane used to embarrass me. The click of it tapping the sidewalk made me feel like a warning. Here comes someone fragile. I used to wince every time it echoed too loudly, but now I listen to it differently. Click, step, click, step. Like a metronome, not weakness, rhythm, persistence. I don't try to muffle it anymore. I let it sing. It's the sound of someone still, moving, still showing up, still here. A breeze stirs the branches above me. One of the leaves flutters loose and glides past my shoulder. A dog barks down the block, but it fades before it ever feels intrusive. I grip the cane with confidence now, not as a crutch, but as a partner. A walking witness to everything I've survived. And I remember whispering once, just to myself, let every step say, I'm still here, and it does. Every single one. I pass the house with the red door, and the woman watering her begonias looks up and waves like always. I nod back. Then there's the man across the street, the one with the navy cap and the bird feeders. He sees me. He always does, but pretends. He doesn't. Once, I might have smiled anyway, waved even, just to make him feel comfortable, just to be polite. Now, I don't bother. I just walk on. Respect, I've learned, isn't about being seen. It's about how you hold yourself when no one's looking. There's a newspaper curled on someone's front step, the plastic still damp with dew. A robin chirps from a rooftop. It's all so ordinary. And yet somehow, it feels like a quiet kind of triumph to move through this neighborhood without needing anyone's nod to validate my place in it. I keep walking. Because I'm not trying to be liked, I'm trying to live, and that, it turns out, is enough. I walk with my chin higher these days, not in defiance, in remembrance. For every time I bent down to scrub floors, to pick up toys, to bow my head in apology just to keep the peace, this is my return, my unbending. My shoulders don't slump anymore. They carry something else now, not shame, not heaviness. They carry lessons. The wind moves through the trees above me, dappling the sidewalk with light and shadow. My steps find the rhythm between them. A sprinkler hums from a yard nearby, casting a fine mist that I feel cool against my skin. I walk upright, not to draw attention, but because I earned the right to, and I remember thinking, this is what strength looks like in older skin, not loud, not sharp, just steady, and I wear it like I wear the red blouse from church, soft, bold, and entirely mine. He laughed once. I don't replay it anymore to hurt myself. I replay it because it marked something, a pivot, a moment when I realized their mockery wasn't my measure. It stung. Of course it did, but it didn't break me. It pointed me somewhere else, towards something I had lost under the weight of being accommodating. I walk now not to prove a point, but to hold on to one, that I belong. Even without applause. Even without being the joke or the helper, or the one who quietly cleans up after everyone else. The breeze shifts as I reach the end of the loop. From here, I can see my house. The flowers on the porch lean toward the sun. Cane taps once more, and I exhale. I didn't have to fight to get here. I just had to keep walking, and I did. I don't need their understanding, not anymore. I don't need their waves or their sudden kindness or their attempts to patch over what they once ignored. I just need my breath, my pace, and this quiet joy of movement, of feeling the sidewalk beneath my feet and knowing I'm still here. I'm not who I was. And that's okay, because what I am now is whole. The birds startle from the tree ahead, flapping upward into the morning light. The sun warms my back. The final stretch home is quiet, familiar. I walk the last step slowly, like savoring the end of a song that used to make me cry, and I remember thinking, this is how freedom sounds. One step, then another. Not for show, not for them, just for me. And that's enough. Thank you for walking this path with me. If you've ever found your strength in quiet moments, or learned to stand a little taller after being overlooked, I'd love to hear your story below. And if you'd like to sit with me again sometime, you know where to find me.